Welcome everybody to the new hangout of the Agile Toolkit. As always, your hosts are Romans and myself, Armin. Before we come to the topic of the day, which will cover the migration to Agile Toolkit 4.2.2, we have a very special guest to welcome, and this is Janis Volbergs. I hope I spelled the name or pronounced the name correctly. And Janis is also on the developer side of the Agile Toolkit, but I think he can introduce himself better than I could do. Hello, Janis.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you very much. Everything's cool here. Could you tell us about your involvement in the Agile Toolkit project?
Well, maybe I should start with some background information. So, first of all, I met Romans in the school in which we both used to study in, the first gymnasium of Latvia in Riga.
10 years ago, even more.
It was many years ago, and that's basically where I started to do various software development things. This is where I mastered some basic programming, basic Pascal, and then further on I moved into the web development and somehow ran across the Romans. So it was, I believe, back in year 2000 when we started to work on some first projects or get to know each other. After that, our ways have been quite diverse. Romans have been more sort of going abroad and setting up his own company and getting his toolkit done, while I was working just on some web development projects and actually implementing my own toolkit, which wasn't really a toolkit. It was, well, in a way it was, but it wasn't the Agile toolkit. And then Romans offered me to work with him on different projects, and that's where my involvement with the Agile Toolkit ancestor began.
Sorry, quick question. And I know a lot of people who have their own toolkits, and they have this sentimental value, and it's very difficult for them to let go of whatever they used to. And I suppose you got over that. So are you continue developing in your own toolkit, or are you just fully in Agile Toolkit now?
I believe for the last approximately 3 years, Agile Toolkit has been my primary tool to develop anything web-based. Obviously, I have some old projects from older times, and sometimes we need to do some stuff in there. So from time to time, I go back and do some work in the old framework, and yeah, it's just different. And I'm not really missing those times. I like the Agile Toolkit a lot. And yeah, I think it was the right move to focus on the Agile Toolkit rather to continue my own framework.
And so, what is your involvement more specifically? Like, are you like doing as much development on it like Romans, or are you coding add-ons? What is your major part in the Agile Toolkit?
Well, I'm definitely not coding as much as Romans is for the Agile Toolkit. Actually, I'm coding very little for the Agile Toolkit core itself. It's more like some fixes, some quick ideas as to how to enhance some functionality. I rather focus more on add-ons that are built to be used with the Agile Toolkit. So some of those are the CMS management system, the eShop. Some of you know such thing as a pattern router. Some like to use that. So that's my involvement in that. In future, I believe there will be more and more add-ons from my side that will benefit the community.
Okay.
What kind of add-ons do you think of publishing soon?
I have one interesting add-on which is work in progress, and just to keep the tension, I won't release all the details about that, but once it's released, it will benefit greatly to many of you who start your own projects with the Agile Toolkit. It will give you a lot of power.
Can you give us a little hint in which direction this is developing?
Okay, so I'm not sure how many of you have worked with MySQL Workbench. I believe most of you. This is basically a visual user interface for setting up your MySQL database, all right? Mm-hmm. And what that add-on will do, it will pretty much magically, based on your MySQL model, create a working environment where all the models, the administration pages are set up just in a blink.
Oh. Very good.
And obviously it will be compatible with Agile Toolkit 4.2 version, and someone looking from a side won't be able to tell that it's not written by hand.
Cool. Very cool. And when do you think we'll see the first version for public?
I believe we won't have to wait too long for that. At the moment, I'm very busy with a few projects. I'm working together with Romans. I need to get those out of the pipeline, and if I have more time, then I'll come back and formalize that plugin. So I believe this year, definitely, maybe
Cool.
within the next few months.
Well, definitely looking forward to seeing that springing into existence.
Yeah, and that's from the man who gave us the CMS, which we were reviewing last week. We had demonstration of CMS, but Janis couldn't demonstrate it himself, so I was doing it for him. Janis, one question: is that going to be a paid add-on or a free add-on?
Let's see. I believe it could be also dual licensed, as the Agile Toolkit itself is.
Okay. I always ask developers like what kind of license they try to, and then either way, it's I support any add-ons.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, I'm really looking forward for Agile Toolkit to get the add-on shop up and running. So I believe many more developers and contributors would like to publish even more add-ons as soon as we have a nice platform to do so.
Yeah.
So I believe that should be released as soon as possible.
Agreed. Yes.
We can have a separate talk about that later on.
Yeah. All right, Janis. Thank you for coming out. I think you need to run there. So you said you had only like 20 minutes or so. So the topic for today's screencast would be the migration from the existing stable version to the Git version, and also understanding what's involved, how we handle compatibility and those pretty complex questions, I'd say. So I would like to get back to our playground. Sorry, this one. And as you remember, last time we started the screencast by upgrading from 4.2 into 4.1 to 4.2. That's what the numbers. And we rarely do releases of Agile Toolkit, but when we do make a release, they are pretty stable, and they're very small number of issues in there, so people keep working on them. And particularly this is related to the fact that people will just take one version and they will build software around that, and they would rarely upgrade out of whatever reasons, but they don't want to break things. But I do certainly encourage everyone to upgrade to the most recent version and keep it updated, because it's not difficult, and Agile Toolkit has a really nice ways of being compatible. Even if some uncompatible things happen in a toolkit, there are ways to have a special controller to reverse a couple of things. For example, in version 4.20, we changed the sequence of parameters in the menu. So when you add the menu, the first parameter, I believe it was the name, and the second was the page name, and they've been swapped around. But there was a compatibility mode which would unswap that in case you just want to get quickly to the new version while keeping the previous features. The way how the whole thing worked is by setting the requirements inside the application. So I will open a project here. So we're going in lost and found as usual. And I'll show you how we could do the version requirements. So that this is done on the API level.
Can you show the screen, please?
Oh, yes. My screen sharing. Meanwhile, hi Emans and Bob.
Hi. Hello.
By the way, Emans, I think you should meet up with Janis and have a beer together. You're both in Riga, right? Okay, you see my screen now?
Yes.
So this method requires, this is a way of how a piece of software could say, I need the toolkit of that particular version. And if it just says what's the target version of the toolkit. Let me show you how it works. So you see there is a requirement for 4.2.1. Let's say I change that to 4.2.3 for our lost and found project. And if someone tries to look at that, he says Agile Toolkit version is too old. What is required and what do we have? And the same thing is used by add-ons. The first argument is Agile Toolkit called ATK, but it could be file store, for example. And now we set the requirements for the file store. And well, the file store is not the add-on, but this is the way how you would build dependencies in Agile Toolkit. So you simply require, like, it's a very basic way. It's not something really complex, but we do want to have check for dependencies sometimes just to avoid some major problems. And of course, as you migrate to the version 4.2.1, you might ask what changed. And let me start by showing you how you can get the list of all the changes in the code. So if you go to the repository of Agile Toolkit in here, and let's say go to branches, I will switch to the previous version, which is, let me see, there's a tag. Let's say 4.2. So this is like a branch which is updated when we have a release. And I want to compare that with the master. So there have been 236 commits since the last stable release. As I click compare, it works and prepares a list of files which have been changed, people who have contributed to the toolkit, and as well you can see the comments there. So you can simply read through this and you will see all the changes which happened. So that there is a URL for that. So adk/compare 4.2 /master, and you will see. Also, you could take some particular commit, of course, and like go to that particular commit and then compare the commit with the master. Actually, you can even specify when you're doing the comparison. You could specify like compare, and then you could input the this ID of the commit. But usually during the releases, I also prepare the release notes, which looks like this, and the release notes explain to you what are the most significant changes and what are the fixes, and usually they would also contain some visual demonstrations. Let me show you how it's from the previous version. So we have a 4.2.1, and if you click on latest changes, this is like what is new in each version. So we had examples, and also it explains to you what are the major things, how to include the compatibility, and how to update, and so on and so on. So right, I have discussed this with Armin briefly, so I'll let Armin focus on the points and ask me questions. Meanwhile, everyone else can also ask me questions in the chat, and I will reply to you about the new exciting features in the version 4.2.2. Okay, Armin, so I'm
okay. Yeah, well, just I think let's start with I can see there that certificate introduction and license checks. Something that changed there because we had like license before. So what did change there?
Let me start with the story of XJS, which is a commercial framework for JavaScript. Initially, it was built by, I don't know, maybe a team, I don't remember exactly, and it was released under MIT license, so or BSD, and it was used by developers, and then the guys decided they want to commercialize the license, so they went to the route of GPL and commercial license. So a more restrictive open source license and commercial license, exactly what Agile Toolkit is doing from day one. But in their move, they alienated a lot of users. The users said, look, no, you started with this permissive license and now you're switching, so many users were unhappy. In the contrary, we're doing it properly from day one. From the day one, we said the license Agile Toolkit will be available under is going to be AGPL, because we want to promote everyone and prompt you to release your code as open source. On the side, if you need to have a closed source software, we are offering commercial licenses, and these are the prices. And there were quite a few license purchases. Thanks everyone who are here who purchased the license. I appreciate that. It's nothing much, to be honest, at this point, but my goal is not to get rich, but instead to see that it's actually valuable for you, and actually like it's more like a small piece of joy, but maybe eventually it would become something more amazing in the future. But because I feel that we are very generous about how we offer Agile Toolkit to the users, and would like to check that user have a valid license. And by valid license, it is either a confirmed open source license or a closed source license. So here I have a lost and found, and since I upgraded to version 1.2.2, it says that my license of Agile Toolkit is unlicensed. So if I click here, I go to a special add-on which is called Licensor, which is there to help me deal with the licenses, and it says this is my current domain. There is no site fingerprint, and there is no license for this, and I can decide if I want to have an open source license or a commercial license. This is not connected with the Agile Toolkit, but the Agile Toolkit org. So there is an interface where you can actually register your license. So I'm just going to show you how this is done. First of all, I need to have either a multi-license or a open source license. I can add them easily, and this multi-site license permits me to generate certificates for as many domains as I want. So I just need to take this domain. I have sites Agile Tech IE, and that's done now. So next I can install it, and it simply gives me a piece of code which I need to copy inside my configuration file. Let's just try and see. You see that it has my email in there. It's not exposed to anyone in any way, but it contributes to the owner of the Agile Toolkit. As you remember, you can have up to 2 developers working on a single domain license. So okay, I'll go to config now and just paste this data here. Okay, back here, refreshing the page, and as you see, I have now a multi-license, I have a site fingerprint, and I have basically the check is confirmed. Now the thing is that this information is stored in API. So if there are any add-ons which are being added to Agile Toolkit, sometimes they will check that the license is actually valid. So whether you're doing an open source or a commercial project, there is a way to check that, and I can show you. I mean, it's not secret. Of course, it can be hacked, so someone would know, but it's better if it's not hacked. So Yeah, it's basically defined on API web level, because for the SLI we simply don't want to do any of that. And there is a method, so it's defined as a private final. So there's license. You can call this, and it will give you if it's unlicensed or the actual license. So it will return either AGPL or multi or single. So 3 possible values. The fingerprint you see here is also used to identify you later on. So it's the same as this one over here. And as you access the store for add-ons later on, which would be seamlessly integrated with your Agile Toolkit, this argument will be passed back and forth securely, and it will ensure that in order for install add-ons, you get your license sorted first. So it's a much better environment, and we're building the whole architecture, but you need to agree to either have an open source or not. And if you want an open source license, you do specify the domain, and you also specify the code repository. And as you can see, that this form is pretty smart. It figured out where our code is located, like right out of it said, oh, it's in a GitHub. It looked in the file. Mm-hmm. So if I just click right, it's not working. The register is not working seamlessly at the moment. That's why we still haven't released 4.2.2. But you will basically go to the site, and you will be able to finish and acquire license right away for your open source license. All you need to have is to specify this code repository. So that's it. That's about the license, and this is probably the biggest change on the Agile Toolkit part. So we're becoming a little bit more strict, but there is a need for that. In terms of how it's done, so there's those are the standard keys. So we simply sign the key generated by you, and you have a public key of Agile Toolkit, and it's used for verification purposes. So there's no online check, and it doesn't slow your software performance.
Okay, because that's what I wanted to ask. If there's like a going backwards and forward to another server that might be slow, and so I don't need to be afraid that my software will become slow.
No. There's just a local license, and it's being checked, and that's about it.
Okay.
Licenses for multiple subdomains. The license is given for domain. So if I haven't fully developed this thing. I suppose we could simply check on look at the last top level domain like .com and the previous, like this part of the domain, and then verify against that. I will make this adjustment before we do the actual release. I want to have it sorted before the release. So any feedback about this is important.
Okay, which also so Eman's question is answered by that.
Yeah, if you're doing a private development, like you're not forced to have this licensed. I mean, you could install it on your local domain, and just leave with that. And we're not probably gonna do anything to prevent you from using Agile Toolkit, because it doesn't cost us anything that you download and use it anyway. But when you release your code, obviously you will set up on a production domain, and this is the point when you acquire the license.
Okay.
And of course, if you have a multi license, you can go back to this interface anytime and register all your domain. And probably we will also have the API how you can simply register it remotely without accessing this. So it should be pretty easy.
Good. I think we can move forward to other features that have
come
into existence, like the support for SQLite.
Right. So that was something I was working on recently, and at the moment we have a website which works fully on SQLite. Maybe I can actually give you like a walk around. Oh, sorry, not here. On the side, just to show you that it actually works. So this website is being, someone deleted the images. Oh no, it's wrong domain. But it's not. So the site entirely powered by SQLite here. And as you can see, there's different databases. It works exactly the same. So there's no indication in the code that the SQLite is being used apart from the configuration file. And it comes with the admin panel as well. All the CRUDs work nicely. Now all the things here. Image upload works, and the CMS works as well. So we have a CMS admin. It all works fine with a SQLite. The only issue I had, and when porting something from MySQL to SQLite, sometimes the primary keys are not being defined properly, so they kind of use int 11 instead of integer, and as a result, it's not incrementing them properly, and things just fail. So you need to be careful at how you define the databases. But the SQLite is in there and it is supported. I also will show you a small thing, how we are supporting SQLite on a low level. And for example, concatenation. So we need to concatenate things, and in MySQL we would use the concat function, but in SQLite there is no function like that. Instead you use a different syntax. So in SQLite, this is like a extension SQLite, which is used if you connect to this SQLite. This operator is used instead for string concatenation. And in MySQL, or actually TSQL globally, we added a new method which is called concat. That's it. Yeah, it's very simple. And the way how it's used is really simple. I'll show you inside the file store. This is how you use it. So this is a TSQL query. You know how you can call expression. So the concat is very simple, similar. You call concat, and then you have as many arguments as you want, and it will concatenate them properly. So you see, I'm giving like all sorts of stuff. Like this is a string. The next argument is a field from the model, and then string again, and another field from the model. And concat will automatically figure out what type of field it is, and it will put it all together inside a single expression. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, it will do it properly for MySQL and SQLite. So it can be customized properly. And yeah, so I think SQLite support is pretty much complete and official. In terms of other databases, there are some. Let me see. So the Postgres support is also here. I'm not sure if it's like 100% or some issues because I don't use PostgreSQL, but you are definitely welcome to try. And if there are any issues, simply report them and we'll resolve them. And there was also someone asking about Microsoft SQL and Oracle, obviously. So we have support for Oracle, just redefining a couple of things which work differently in Oracle. I think it was working more or less. So that's support for SQLite.
Then you have another new feature, or improvement regarding shortening. And
SUHOSIN. Yes, it was a big demand with the version 4. to 1, and many people were unable to launch Agile Toolkit application with a SUHOSIN.
Can you elaborate what SUHOSIN means, what that is?
Yeah, SUHOSIN is a hardened PHP project, which means it makes it a little bit more secure. And it does it by restricting the amount of parameters you can feed inside a PHP. It also restricts how long your get arguments could be and post arguments. Incidentally, Agile Toolkit has internal naming for all the components. So when you add a new view, it gets a unique name, and those names, they grow pretty big for a large project, sometimes 100 characters or so. SUHOSIN by default limits that at I don't know, maybe 60 or 100 for the get argument specifically, and unfortunately the Agile Toolkit simply stops working at some pages. Very annoying issue. So what we're doing, we changed Agile Toolkit in a way, so when you add, when you have a deep, like very high tree, a view inside view inside view inside view, and the name is very long. If it gets too long, it will get shortened automatically. And the way how it is doing it, so we have a property inside API which is called max name length. So if the name goes longer than 60, it will shorten it, and all the child will also have a shortened name. So it says SUHOSIN in here, so it's file API SLI, and it is system-wide shortening, and it's been tested by many users. It works very good. So I guess that's it for SUHOSIN and shortening.
Next thing would be the add-on page routing.
And yeah, so we gradually were improving support for add-ons. We want you to develop add-ons, and we want you to have as much power as possible and as much flexibility. So the grid add-ons were added just in this version. So I'll start with grid add-ons. I think there was a demo for inline. Maybe not here. Well, if you Google for inline editor Agile Toolkit, it was a big demand. So people want to edit multiple records at the same time without going seamlessly between both of them. So oh, why is it asking my password? Previously there was a field called inline edit, and it was working with grid, but this functionality have moved inside a separate add-on, and this is I'll have to look at this. So this is how you enable it. So you just add a formatter grid inline, and it automatically shows you the inline edit feature, and it's implemented as an add-on. Some other things probably would be moved inside add-on, like we had the buttons, different types of buttons in add-on for grid. I think there is also outstanding issue with this grid inline, which we also need to fix before we do release. The other part of this update is the page routing. Editable. No, Bob, I don't think. It's I think it was just for editable field or something, but it might have been moved somewhere, or I'm not sure. Anyway, I can, if someone is interested, you can ask me later in the comments, and I'll give you the proper link. So the other part is actually being able to route pages inside add-on, and if if you remember that we have pages inside this project, like item/report, item/anything, manage CMS, and so on. But if you type licensor, for example, and it's a built-in add-on, you see that this page is actually being rooted inside an add-on. An add-on handles this page. Let's see how this page is implemented. So inside licensor, there is a folder called page, and inside page we have index. It's a very regular page. It simply lives inside a namespace. That's the only difference to the page. And in order to make this routing possible, yeah, that's the what you need to write. So you need to write API root pages licensor, and that means all the sub pages of that particular page will be rooted inside the add-on of the same name. So for example, if I root pages for the CMS, then if I type CMS up here, it will be automatically rooted inside the CMS. Now this might be dangerous in some situations, because maybe add-on requires maybe the user of add-on wants to do the authentication. So or maybe he doesn't want to show all the pages to the user, just selectively. So still, you know, even though the page is defined as I showed you before, let's say page, you can still kind of extend it yourself and do whatever you want with it. Just and place it locally, and at the same time, this this routing, what was it? This routing line, it will not be there by default, but it will be included in the add-on installation instructions. So if you do really want to have some routing, you can do that, and then part of your application will be inside an add-on. But it's up to the developer who is installing the add-on. So we don't want to plug any holes inside your application. You kind of need to be aware about what you are installing. Okay, should we go to next point then?
Yes, now comes the file store, which comes with an interesting new feature.
The URL field. We did cover it in a previous tutorial as well, but it's still a significant feature, even though it's not inside the Agile Toolkit itself, but it is inside one of the primary add-ons which complement Agile Toolkit and included with a distribution. So that field inside the file, so I'll just go over quickly. It wasn't here previously, and we used all sorts of complicated things to calculate the URL, but now it's really easy. So we just use this URL, and it works as a normal expression. So we could have it anywhere, and because that's a field, we can also set it as a display field. You know how we can have a public title field URL, do something like that, and instead of seeing record number 5, record number 6 inside your file store, you will see the URLs instead. Like maybe if that's what you want, you can do it. Okay, so we're moving to the section about the upgrades. We do bundle jQuery and jQuery UI with Agile Toolkit. And jQuery is being updated from version 1.5 to the version 1.7. Meanwhile, jQuery UI has been updated from 1.8 into 1.9, which is currently a pre-release. So they are about to make a release, but they don't make a release. I don't know why. They have betas out, they have pre-releases out, and we do include the pre-release. We like the version 1.9 because of a couple of nice features like positioning, hints, and all that. We simply need to for them to release it. And I don't really like releasing Agile Toolkit stable version with a pre-release version of jQuery UI. But if they will continue dragging it on, I will have no choice but to include it. Okay. As a note, if you don't like the version which is bundled with Agile Toolkit, you can put in inside a configuration file and redefine and then use a different version.
What is the jQuery compatibility mode?
So about this one, jQuery, it registers this character at $sign. This one, and it is a jQuery object. If you're using MooTools, MooTools also wants to use this for their own purposes, and there are many different libraries, and they all want to use the character because it's now so attractively short. jQuery also have a longer version for jQuery, like this, and what we're doing inside, what we changed in version 4.2.2 is that you can use jQuery in the compatibility version, so you might also plug in MooTools and some other stuff, and Agile Toolkit will still work fine. And again, you don't need to change any of your code, it will simply work out nicely.
Janis has a question regarding the jQuery libraries. How about the Google hosted jQuery libs? Can they be integrated?
Possibly. So this is a class which does the inclusion of jQuery. Yeah, so it gets config a file from here, and it concatenates. Well, probably not as easy. You won't be able to do it easily. Okay, that's an interesting point, and we can probably address that by moving that into a separate function and being able to redefine that.
Yeah, but because as Google hosts always the latest versions, it's of course an easy way to stay up to date.
Yeah, maybe. I don't like relying on external resources myself. For the reason because sometimes I develop in no internet environment and I still want my application to work. Sometimes I don't, I'm worried that Google actually might track my JavaScript requests and keep some logs. So I prefer to use a local version, and I also have control of the version, and I can mash together jQuery with 5 other files and then have one single file. But yeah, I understand it.
Well, maybe at a later stage it could be configurable where the jQuery library can be found, whether it's your server or, for example, the Google server.
Yes, and the way how I would do it is simply move that method inside a separate, so move this line inside a separate method, which you can then redefine and then do it the way you like. So it wouldn't be exactly an add-ons. You would need to extend the jQuery class and then use your own class instead. But possible. So right now we can just only change the version, which is local.
Okay. Coming to the back end, there are some minor some fixes or.
Right, so these were the most significant changes in the release, but there are lots of different small improvements. I will go quicker over the improvement. Some of them will just need to a small note. This change was only done recently, and if we look inside, if you're throwing exception inside Agile Toolkit, you use exception method, and there it is, and it now have another argument where you can specify the exception code. So pretty useful if you're building APIs. When you catch this exception, you can then extract this code And as you look inside this, you can learn more about it. Okay, I'll probably have examples with the release as well. I'll just go to the next thing. Yeah, so load by. We can now load model by any field, and not only the SQL models, but also NoSQL models too. They were like get by method and also load by, and it works properly and nicely. TSQL now have support for extracting the debug information without breaking your UI. So let's say you have a slow query or anything like that. You can use TSQL get debug query, and it will give you back some interesting information, like the actual query you have built. And you can store it in a log file, so you don't output to the user as you do with the TSQL debug. But with this, there is like a silent version of the debug. Okay. The next is TSQL on models can be DB specific. Again, in previous version 4.2.1, we had support for multiple databases, but only a single database was like a primary database for the whole application. And when we create a new model, they will just start working with a main database right away, with no easy way to change it. Now, when you create a model, you can specifically tell the model to use a different database connection. So you can have multiple connections. One could be SQLite, another could be MySQL. And as you create model table, it has a property called TSQL. So as any property, you can pass it as an array inside a second argument to add. And you can specify a different TSQL. If you don't specify it, it will fall back to the API, which is how it was using before. And also, if you have one connection to MySQL and another connection to SQLite, they will properly generate the TSQL will properly generate the proper class. Will use the proper class of the query, so the syntax of the query will be different depending on where you're connected.
Bob has a question regarding the exception. How to catch the exception? Just use try catch or better ATK4 approach. Not sure what he means.
Well, he asks if we use try catch or ATK4 can offer something better. ATK4 does have something interesting, which is a default handler for exceptions. If we look inside API, let's say web, there is this loop, yeah. So the construction which calls init methods, and then later on it calls the rendering. If error occurs, it calls a method called caught exception. So you can intercept, you can redefine this field, and you will get all the exceptions ever been thrown in and not caught inside your init or rendering, and you can decide what you want to do with it. Interestingly, there is also this hook caught exception. So and this is used by a logger. So when you add logger, which is added by default with the front end, it will actually intercept all exceptions for you. Now, the only issue I would like to add, but I'm not sure how at the moment, is if for some reason the database operation fails, we'd like to have maybe a callback and then retry the operation. In a situation such as now, you try maybe to add a new user, but the user table is not there. So maybe you want to quickly create a table and then retry the operation. And at the moment, it's not supported, and I'm not sure how to do it nicely. But if you have any suggestions like where we could place that, it will be very valuable to me. We can probably catch this exception using this hook, but we won't be able to resume the operation without interruption. So the user will be faced with a page refresh or something. All right, let's go back to the list. models, orders. Yeah, order. Yeah, so inside a model table, now you can set order. Table. Okay, so sets an order on table, field must be properly defined. Field, and then the next argument is whether or not it's going to be descending. So by default, you can sort by name, it will be alphabetical. If you say name, comma, true, it will be descending order. This is obsolete argument. And the good thing about this is you can sort on expressions as well. So you have expression in your model, you can sort on the expression, and it will automatically figure out how it should be done in the backend. This is why it is slightly better than trying to sort using TSQL, which you had to do with the previous version. Okay, moving on. Handling null properties, and I have to say big thanks to Imans and everyone else who helped me find those issues. But Agile Toolkit works much better now with null values. So let's say you have a text field and you assign it a null value and then you save your model. Previously it would create an empty string inside the MySQL, but now it properly stores a null value. And the same applies for the booleans as well. So I think it's important that this integrity is followed. This was an annoying issue with the version 4.421. If you specify having multiple times for the TSQL, it would use or for some reason instead of and to concatenate them. Really tricky one, but that means if you add condition on a calculated field several times, they have or, they're being joined by or, not and is being fixed now. Model get a field query. That's a new thing, and we are using that. Okay, let me think. Model item. Yeah, so we already I showed it last episode how we use that, but this allows us to traverse into a related entity. So we're going after the image model, and we're asking model to give us the expression for only single field. But previously we need to get TSQL, delete all the fields, and then add a single field, which could possibly be expression, and in which case we are pretty much screwed. But right now we simply say field query URL, and it will give us the TSQL query for that particular field only, no other fields. Mm-hmm. And it's really useful for creating expression based on subselects. Lister data pulling changes. Again, pretty significant change to the way how models are iterated. If you have looked inside Lister, Lister is a class for listing anything, any type of data on the screen where something needs to be repeated. And the main rendering procedure is like 4 lines long, where we get iterator, which is in our case a model, and we simply iterate it, assigning ID inside current ID and the data inside current rows. That's array goes inside here and ID goes in here. Then we do formatting and we output the data. The issue here is that the query previously was built when the iterator was pulled for the first time. But now it is possible to prefetch it. And if we look inside the paginator class, so what it is doing, it is calling a pre-exec on the model. It has absolutely no effect on anything. So it's still going to be a single query, but it starts executing it a little bit sooner. And as a result, it allows us to do like calculate rows before and modified. In any way, I will no. This is the source pre-exec. This is the proper one. But in any way, this is a pretty powerful stuff. It would allow us to have multiple models, execute them simultaneously, and if all of them are complex queries addressed at different databases, they will be executed at the same time, and by the time we need them, they will be here. And keep in mind that the model could theoretically be a remote API call, in which case I know pre-exec also is pretty powerful thing. So we querying it a bit faster. So a bit more control over the way how models are being queried. Of course, after you do the pre-exec, you cannot add the additional parameters into the query because it will just break it. Okay, and the last thing on the backend here is the load random, which is not a very big thing, but a model have a method called load random. You already know about load any, which loads the first possible record from the database. Load random does the same thing, but it loads a random record, so pretty straightforward. And that's it for the backend.
So now to the front end.
Any questions from you, Armin?
No, I went through all the questions that are in the chat, and I have no questions so far.
Yeah, I have to say that the whole thing is very, very backward compatible. Usually, if some feature is obsolete, it stays throughout a major version. So it would be 4.3 or maybe even 4.4 of Agile Toolkit, where some features we use today might be dropped. So we have a long support life cycle. And in years, I would say that would be like 3 years or so. So your software could be updated to the most recent version of Agile Toolkit only with minor changes without any problem at all. Of course, after a couple of years, you will need to refactor your software and change it, because that's a longer period. But no one does it anyway. Like they stay on the older versions anyway. Okay, next is the field-specific exceptions in forms. This is actually an issue, and as you know, we can throw exception. And there are a few of them, such as exception validity check, which has a property to set the field. So if that happens, like in here, it just works as a property. You see set field, get field, really easy. Doesn't do anything extra. But when form is catching validity check error, it will try to get the field property, and if there is a field of that particular name, it will show error under that field. And that means if you're throwing exception inside a model, you can tell which field the exception was related to, and it will be displayed accordingly by the form. This works only if you do the either form update, I think, or if you use like form needs to be able to catch this exception in order to display it. Otherwise, it will go to the main handler of the API, and the API wouldn't care about the field anymore. Okay, so this is where we're executing and catching, and this happens inside a submitted event. And so that if that happens inside validation hook, or maybe a submit hook, which can be triggered by onSubmit. Yeah, so it's there is a format is submitted. That's one way how you can check the form submission. But the other one is if you call onSubmit and pass the call along, which is like a 5.3 version of submission, and this will catch the error, while is submitted will not catch the error because it's simply outside the try block. Okay, let's move ahead. form field add class. So yeah, form fields are a bit more friendly to customizing styles and classes. The error in API, in authentication have been fixed, and this have been a big problem, because if you download the Agile Toolkit from the website and go for authentication check, you get an error. Overlooked on my part, but the default way how you check for static username and password is not working for 4.2.1, but it's being fixed in 4.2.2. And the way how it's fixed is we simply create a new model, static model, and we use that model for the authentication. Something you noticed previously in the start of the previous episode is that the read-only fields were not rendering properly. I'll go inside a bit into a little bit more details. So what we made, it was a big change sometime after the 4.0 release, but we changed the way how HTML escaping is working. So if you output anything into the template using the regular set, that this will be escaped as if you would pass HTML and you would like to see it on the screen as HTML. But a lot of old add-ons or old pieces of code, they were not aware of this change, and they were still using this output method to send some HTML, and it just results in some HTML being on the screen. It is of course better because this way is more secure. By default, we know that no HTML injection could be triggered inside add-ons easily. But as I said, there were a couple of things around which were using append instead of append HTML. Okay, the small fixes there and here and there. I just picked a few of them. One of them is a event on file upload. So when file is finished uploading, there is now triggering an upload event, and you can hook to this event to do some interesting things, such as display a pop-up or a alert saying, "Thank you, your file has been successfully uploaded." Or you can re-enable your disabled button if you want to inside the form. So you can already do it using this event. And yeah, so I already mentioned about the grid inline going into the add-on. So that's all on the front end. Any questions, Armin? What do you think?
No. And there are no in the chats, so I think we can go on with the test suite.
Yeah, so test suite, it was it's been improved over time, and first of all, the class for testing individual functionality was introduced. So this class came first, and it was available in the previous version. So you can run a number of tests, and you can have like test information and test results. It's pretty useful, but after a while you create many different test pages, and it's very difficult to see how many what break. You need to go into each individual page. So what we did is we added the support for silent execution of unit tests, and this is what you can see on this screen. So when I refresh the index page, it will go into each tester individually. It will run tests, all the tests, and will tell me how many tests were executed successfully, how many failed, how many exceptions I received, and also it will tell me what's the total memory consumption for the whole execution cycle. And this is also indicates the speed. Now, speed used to be measured in microseconds, but recently we switched into ticks. Yeah, so here you see the ticks with a precision of 10 ticks, more or less. And if the operation requires a lot of logic, then you have more ticks. Okay, so for example, this operation here required 160 ticks. And the ticks is like CPU instructions. You can look them up. It's actually a PHP feature I didn't know about before, but it's a PHP feature. It's been around for a while now.
And what is the advantage of calculating that in ticks rather than in microseconds?
It is more accurate. So it gives us how many operations, low-level operations were executed from point A to B inside the code. While when we are doing it based on a timer, you know, maybe there is some sort of background process happening with the server.
Yeah, okay.
And it's always changing back and forth. So it's very difficult to measure.
And so I see the actual like load that is produced rather than just the time it needs.
Yeah. It is slightly different to the CPU, I suppose. For example, if you might have operation which relies on the database connection, and it will wait for the query to come back, and it will take you a lot of time, but it's not executing those operations, so that the CPU is not loaded. So it is just different, and I think it's much better to test against that.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think the last thing I wanted to mention is the dialog positioning. And okay, let me go anywhere, let's say here on a grid. When I click add, the dialog comes up. Now previously the position of the dialog was determined by the CSS. Since then, jQuery UI have released a positioning widget which allows me to define any position in a pretty flexible way. You can learn more about jQuery UI position. Well, there you go. UI position example. And it allows us to position elements relatively to other elements. So now, when a dialog comes up, what I actually can do, I could say, position the left top edge of this dialog at the top left edge of the add button. So the dialog would be like under here, which allows a lot of interesting UI enhancements. And therefore, we are not using a CSS to position dialogs anymore, but it is handled by jQuery UI.
What about the existing code that still uses CSS for positioning it, or depends on the CSS positioning? Will it still be working like I would expect?
Well, the Agile Toolkit comes with the CSS files. So if you update the Agile Toolkit, you will automatically start consuming the new CSS files, and they do not have the rule for CSS positioning anymore. Instead, they have a modification in JavaScript, which will position them using jQuery.
Okay.
So it's pretty transparent, you know, you don't need to worry about anything.
So, any more questions? You can put them in the chat window.
Yes, and from all of you guys, I'd like to hear a feedback maybe on anything what's outstanding here, because we are closing on the release, and I have been delaying it for a long time, and I explained why. We probably will work on sorry, do you want to read the question?
Will on condition be still on the list to be implemented?
Okay, so the question is, when we're doing a join in the table, like this, by default it creates a condition on. Yeah, so join table B on blah. Sometimes users would like to have a join on multiple fields, like not only IDs but maybe something else. Never happened to me, but if other people want certain feature, I'm okay to add it. But I'm not sure if it will make it inside this release or the next release, but it should be out pretty soon. I'm trying to avoid doing anything too complex here. and destructive before the release. So a couple of things needs to wait. But then again, at the same time, we're doing a lot of code, such as I'm working on localization, doing pretty nice progress in localizations, and this needs to have a fresh start with Agile Toolkit. So after we get this release out, we'll have many new interesting features being added into the core. So we'll kind of restart the development. We'll be more confident, and we will know that people who need stability, they can rely on a stable release. Does that mean small?
Emans asked, will 4.2.2 be created from the master branch? I mean, changes we commit to master branch now will still exist in 4.2.2, right?
That's right, yes. Yeah. But you know, if you're a hardcore user of Agile Toolkit, I know Janis is, for example, and he always stays on the master. He doesn't stick with releases. He keeps on going and going. Okay, I'm just waiting for the final questions, and
just fix my...
Emans is a very proud maintainer of our autocomplete add-on. So we managed to kickstart it a couple of Hangouts back, and Emans is taking a very active role. He's maintaining it. I gave him the, like, he is able to push the changes into the repository himself, and he it goes very well. And so if you guys want certain feature to be completed, maybe for the next event, simply tell me, and we can kickstart it in the Hangout, and then back into the add-on, and then you will be able to enhance it further yourself.
So, Emans is now typing another question, maybe?
Autocomplete still needs adding form. Autocomplete plus. I'm not sure how to properly create that. Well, you can create it improperly, and if someone will fix it, that you just need a button, and when the button's clicked, you open something up. You just need to limit the pages, and also maybe you can take advantage of the page routing, but I'm not sure about that. Yeah, maybe not. No, that's not a good way.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to thank Janis for joining and sharing his experience with Agile Toolkit, and looking forward to the new add-on that you proposed in the beginning of this Hangout.
Yeah,
and I say goodbye to, well, first of all, thanks everybody for being with us today, and see you next week, and until then, happy coding.